Idaho's congressional delegation has held steady at 4 for more than a century. That's 4 members of Congress. And during that time, we've had a few influential members. Senators William Borah and Frank Church come to mind. And perhaps you could throw in Congresswoman Helen Chenoweth Haig into that mix. Whatever your criteria, that status continues today. The Gem State may rank near the bottom when it comes to total representation in Congress, 2 in the House versus 52, for example, like in California. But our members still find themselves plugged into some of the most important roles in the legislative branch, giving Idahoans some outsized influence in our nation's capital. Joe Paris went there to our nation's capital to find out what that power holds and how it translates to issues Idahoans care about most. And today, he visits with Congressman Mike Simpson and Russ Fulcher.
The House will be in order.
In the United States House, Idaho's delegation doesn't even come close to making up 1% of the legislative body, just 2 out of 435, but their influence is certainly outsized.
Those of us in the Idaho delegation have been very blessed. If you were king for a day and you wanted to give influence to a state and you had 4 people in 4 places, there's a very good chance that you would strategically put them all where we are right now. And that wasn't necessarily by design, but that's how it's worked out over the course of time.
Congressman Russ Fulcher represents Idaho's 1st congressional district.
We've got well over 1 million people in our district, and that's a huge congressional district, largest in the nation right now. That's because of Idaho's growth. That's a good thing because Idaho's growing because people want to be there.
Subcommittee will come to order.
And those people have a representative on one of the most important committees, Energy and Commerce.
And I believe it's somewhere around 70% of all the legislation that comes through the House goes through that committee. And so with Congressman Simpson, with appropriations, on the House side at least, just about every piece of legislation that passes through the House has Idaho fingerprints on it of some sort.
The energy and water appropriation bill signed by the president in 2018.
You'll see the Idaho influence rooted deeply here.
Thank you, Chairman Clough.
Congressman Mike Simpson sits on arguably the most powerful House committee, Appropriations, aka Budgets, also working as the chairman on Interior, Environment, and related agencies, leading major budget discussions.
And when they're putting the package together, that's when you interact with leadership saying, hey, if you're going to put that in there, then I'm not going to be able to vote for it and that type of thing. So that's the kind of interaction that goes on between members and between leadership when they put these packages together.
The high visibility of the role comes with the spotlight on decision making, magnified for sure in the budget world, like with votes on the recent rescission package.
I have to look at a bill and weigh it and say, in total, is it good or is it bad? I could find a reason to vote against every appropriation bill because there's something in there that might be important to somebody else, but I think is crazy, you know, or whatever.
Idaho's congressional offices will tell you the #1 topic they get calls on recently is the Big Beautiful Bill, and specifically the Medicaid provisions. Both Congressman Simpson and Fulcher supported efforts to cut out what they describe as waste, fraud, and abuse in the Medicaid program. Critics say this will take away coverage from people. Supporters say it's a cost-saving measure to ensure survival of the program. It does come down to perspectives on the so-called entitlement programs and how they should operate.
It's framed that way because there are people that believe that everybody that comes here ought to qualify for any American program, whether it's food stamps, whether it's Medicaid, any other program, that they ought to qualify for it because they don't distinguish between someone that's here legally and someone that's here illegally. I think we ought to take care of American citizens. And so I get a little tired of the 15 million people are going to lose their benefits or something like that. We know about 15 million people who shouldn't be in this country that over the last 4 years have been let across the border.
You can only register for Medicaid in one state now. You could do multiple. And so in Idaho, for example, a lot of people move from California. You can file for it in California, file for it in Idaho. Well, that's not right. And so we fixed that. Non-citizens don't necessarily qualify for all that, right? Well, they don't pay into the tax structure the way that citizens do. And so I think that's fair too. Bottom line is that if you're on the traditional population for Medicaid, you can expect that to be there. And thankfully, due to these reforms, it probably will be there. And it wouldn't have been unless we'd have made these changes.
Immigration is also a major Idaho topic in the national spotlight. Agriculture and dairy industries across our state depend on that immigrant workforce. But the conversation comes at the crossroad of a renewed conversation about immigration and enforcement of laws.
The answer to the immigration question, I think, is very simple. come to America legally, all right? But that also means for those of us in a leadership position, we need to make that reasonable, set the policies so that we can address our needs, but create a legal channel as well. And so now that the border is secure, I think we'll be able to address that.
They're a critical part of our economy, and I think the administration is moving in that direction. So I'm thinking we're having a good chance of maybe passing legislation to reform the H-2A program. We've got to create a legal workforce for agriculture, actually for the housing industry, for the hospitality industry, and all those things. And I think we're headed in the right direction.
And coming up tomorrow on the 208, we're going to have a profile over on the Senate side of things. Brian, over on the Senate side, you could argue that Idaho really has the most pound-for-pound power out of any really delegation. Of course, in the United States Senate, every state gets 2 seats. It is interesting, too, when I was talking to a viewer about the stories that we were covering, they said, well, how did Idaho get these high-profile positions? A lot of it is tenure. If you look at Idaho's delegation, they've been there for decades. And as you work your way through the system, you find yourself in these leadership positions. And something that Congressman Fulcher also highlighted, they're also in the majority party right now. So during the Biden administration, their influence is significantly different.
It's diminished.
Yeah, so now that
depending on how Congress is stacked.
Correct, and with the way that Congress is stacked right now with the Republican majority, very narrow, and President Trump in the Oval Office, it does put Idaho's congressional delegation in a very unique spot. When I talk to members of Congress from other states while we were in D.C., truly envious of the situation Idaho has found itself in.
I have a question about what Congressman Simpson said. I talked about, or you mentioned it in your story, the waste, fraud, and abuse, that's why they voted for the big, beautiful bill when it comes to Medicaid. Did they have any examples of this waste, fraud, and abuse, this rampant waste, fraud, and abuse?
Yeah, so when you talk about the programs itself, the entitlement programs, it's not that people are feeling, oh, they're entitlements. These are just what they're called. But to answer your question, there are states, for example, that would allow undocumented people to receive benefits because that state has decided as part of the expansion population, for example, Utah, pregnant women and children are allowed to get certain health benefits that are not really supposed to, in some states' view, go to them. So they talk about that type of benefits, and that 15 million is an estimate from some of the data that's been crunched. You can see that some people believe it's less, some people believe it's more.
And did he say the 15 million that will be kicked off Medicaid, it's okay because there are 15 million people who came across the border illegally? Is that the equation?
There are 2 numbers that are commonly construed that way. He didn't specifically outline it that way, but some people have pushed out to this number of the open border policy during the Biden administration, how many people came into the country, and then how many people are estimated to be on these programs in their perspective. But you talk to critics, they will say that those numbers maybe are overblown and that the 2 numbers have nothing to do with each other. Again, though, we know that from the federal level down, especially in a state like Idaho, conservative majority, there is really a renewed look at kind of getting rid of the expansion population in the sense that they want to go back to what the Medicaid, Medicare programs were originally designed for.
All right, thanks, Joe. Look forward to tomorrow. Appreciate it.